So I'm going to talk mainly about instability due to gap imbalance, and I'm not going to talk anything about the instability following fractures or infection or loosening late loosening. So I'm going to talk about these 5 things. What is the incidence, classification, causes, prevention, and treatment. So if you see the literature, incidence of instability in a knee, primary knee, is quite something. I mean, it is almost 27%, 24%, and then another study, which is quite a huge study, which was published in 2018, instability is almost 23%. Though the instability is going down slightly with our understanding, and possibly with the robotics, it is it may go down even further, but this still remains the problem, which is sometimes underdiagnosed and with a conventional, conventional sort of knee replacement. So this is the modern literature classification. We all know about extension, flexion, mid-flexion, genuine recurvatum, and global. And once the patient presents to you with the various symptoms which I'm going to talk about, one has to evaluate the patient completely, symptoms-wise, examination-wise, and taking these X-rays in weight-bearing and possibly CT scan to see the malrotation and osteolysis. So first, talking about extension instability. So it can be again symmetric and asymmetric. Symmetric means where both the medial and the lateral side are lax compared to the flexion, and asymmetric when there's only one side angular deformity. So symmetric would be when excess of the femoral resection has one has done a excess distal femoral resection. And asymmetric is when there is residual soft tissue imbalance, or sometimes when one does an iatrogenic ligament injury. So in symmetric extension instability, knee is balanced in flexion but loose in extension. So what do you do? So it also amounts to some degree of hyperextension. And in the X-rays, you see elevated joint line because you have cut more of distal femur. So here, putting a thicker poly means, that is what we were discussing just now, that putting a thicker poly would mean tight flexion resulting in a decreased deep flexion. So you don't put just a tight, thicker poly. You may also produce patella baja and may cause more of mid-flexion instability. So treatment for this is distal femoral augment. So when you revise this, you have to put distal femoral augments to recreate the correct joint line, and that can be recreated by measuring from the lateral and the medial condyle, and also seeing the patella, where the patella is, the lower pole of the patella. Now, asymmetric extension gap happens when you have bad deformities and one has not corrected the deformity in the coronal plane, whether it's varus or valgus. So this is one example here where on the left you can see that the left knee was not well corrected, and that led to medial tightness of the structures that gave rise to medial polywear and stretching of the lateral structures. Now this is resulted into an extension gap trapezoidal, which is obviously unbalanced. Now this will need a revision, and here both the components has to be revised. We can talk about whether both should be done or one should be done, but in practice and good result are always achieved when you have both the components revised. Here, unfortunately, you can see here that there was a medial ligament avulsion, and that was fixed with a anchor suture. And you can also see that whenever such thing happens, there is always a more wear and tear of the poly on the medial and the posterior aspect. So that was now when patient comes to you late. I mean, this is when they came to you late, and you can see that there is a tilting of the tibial component. Again, the same thing has happened, that the medial side has not been corrected well, which has led to the tightness of the medial structures and loosening of the implant. So this was corrected obviously with the full revision where sleeves were used. Of course, that is used basically because of the loss. In sometimes with the with overcorrection, or sometimes there is an inadvertent injury to the medial collateral ligament, one should be very careful. So if you first thing is of course prevention, and while doing primary total knee, one should be very careful about the medial ligament. You can see here on the right side how close it is to the meniscus when you have excised the meniscus, and also sometimes when there is a large osteophyte, you have to be very careful when you are taking out the osteophyte from the medial tibial and the femoral side. But if you do produce this, if you do recognize at the time of the surgery or soon after the surgery, of course soon after the surgery you have to take the patient again to the theater and reconstruct or repair the MCL. You don't have to do anything more than the repair and post-operative bracing for at least 6 weeks. So this is what was done here. It was of course identified at the time, and it was fixed with the screws and brace used for the 6 weeks. And then later on you can see on the right side there was no problems. It has been also written in the literature that when you do a primary repair, either at the time of index surgery or even post knee replacement, when you recognize MCL injury or tear, or which happens immediately post or within the first few weeks, you can go ahead and repair with brace at least 6 weeks or maybe up to 8 weeks. And there's no instability. But of course, if it's a chronic instability, then there's a full revision required and just not the repair and reconstruction. Now the second thing is flexion instability, and here the etiology is that in the primary index surgery, you have either removed more of posterior femoral condyles, or your tibial cut is there's excessive posterior slope. You may have used an undersized femoral component, or there is a rupture of PCL and CR knees. So you can see on the right side that the condyle, the posterior condyle has been removed more in the X-rays above, and there is a more posterior slope in the X-rays below, giving rise to this flexion instability. Diagnosis is always challenge. I mean, if it's a frank one, then you can make it, but there's always a challenge when it's a very subtle problem. And that is, the patient may present to you with recurrent effusions. They may say that there is something loose inside. They may, of course, give a history that they are unable to rise from the chair or descend or ascend from the stairs. There is always a posterior and anterior draw test. So here you can see that there is a posterior drawer here, and if it is more than 1 centimeter, it is quite confirmatory of flexion instability. Treatment, there is hardly any role of non-operative treatment for these patients, though a lot of people would not go for a revision surgery. Here again, do not insert just a thicker insert, otherwise your extension gap will increase, there will be a flexion contracture.
Dr. Kharbanda,
again, yeah.
Can you please speeden it up?
Yes, okay. And revision surgery is indicated. And in the revision surgery, these are the points to be noted, that you increase the posterior condylar offset, you decrease the posterior slope, and correct the component malrotation. If you are still not able to do it, if the gap mismatch still exists, then you have to resect more of distal femur and put a thicker insert. But then don't do too much of resection of distal femur. And if there's still a huge gap mismatch, then a rotating hinged implant should be used. This is what has been shown, which I just discussed. There is also mid-flexion instability, which is poorly understood. Again, the problem is to recreate here. Again, the problem is that there is a elevation of the joint line. Sometimes you have used a multi-radius femoral component and there is excessive medial collateral laxity. So to prevent mid-flexion instability, don't do posterior cuts. Always first remove the osteophytes and the soft tissue before you do a more distal femoral cuts. Principle of management is the same: restore the joint line and balance the gaps. Genuine recurvatum is rare, and management is again generally rotating hinged. Global multi-planar instability also is rare, but if you get cases like this, again the hinged. So this is the summary of what I said just now. The diagnosis can be challenging. One should first exclude the infection or other causes of pain. Prevention is always best. Good surgical technique. Find out the cause of instability, classify it, and then correct it. Both the components should be revised in most cases. This gives the best result. You increase the constraint if the gaps are not balanced, and results are less predictable in this kind of revision than loosening and sepsis. Thank you.